Hey guys, Turk here. Hope you're having a good one. Over the past several months, we've been on a quest to figure out the best resolutions, frame rates, as well as the types of hardware that we should put into our PC rigs in order to have the best gaming experience as possible. And judging by some of the feedback, maybe it's not best to just rely on my own opinions on the matter. So I figured let's go and talk to the professionals that do this for a living and see what types of resolutions, frame rates, as well as quality settings that they're going to be using. So I journeyed up to Dreamhack Dallas just a couple weeks ago, and I talked to 3 different esports teams that were competing in the Intel Extreme Masters Counter-Strike Global Offensive Tournament. I figured they'd know what they're talking about. So we're going to be talking to Big, Furia, as well as G2 Esports and seeing just what they have to say. All right, so we're here at Dreamhack Dallas, and we've got one of the big esports teams that's going to be competing with the Counter-Strike in their big official thing. And I know this is like really weird kind of questions to ask you because I do science and technology and PC gaming and stuff. I was really curious, what resolution do you like to play your games at, particularly Counter-Strike or any FPS kind of games?
I mean, I usually go for full HD, like 1920 x 180, I guess.
1080, yeah. Okay.
But I don't like to go like over that because I feel like I have a lot of input lag if I play another resolution. I might go under and like, for example, 1280 times 960 or something, and then I play it on stretch mode. Yeah, these are my things.
So you like to upscale from lower resolutions sometimes?
Yes, sometimes.
Okay.
Yes.
Outside of the input latency, is there a particular performance reason why you would go with 1080p or a lower resolution instead of?
Yeah, it's just preference, to be honest, just preference. I tend to change the settings a lot, like just to try out new things. I've been playing Counter-Strike since 15 years, so you need to mix up things a little bit so it doesn't get boring, of course.
Cool.
And yeah.
So what particular graphics card do you typically play with? Is it like an Nvidia 3080, 3090? Do you all use AMD? What kind of hardware do you like to use?
Mostly Nvidia. I don't like the AMD drivers, to be honest. I feel like they're a little bit confusing, and Nvidia feels much more, how do you say it, like user-friendly?
More natural.
Yeah, more natural as well, yeah. And yeah, I think I have the 3090 Ti at home, but I'm not sure.
At the top end
the
graphics card, that's really cool. So I'm kind of curious if you were to use a 4K monitor, because that's what Nvidia wants us to game at. They use DLSS and all these other technologies. If you were given that option, would you still always go back to 1080p, even though with the higher resolution, you'll be able to see pixels and your enemies better, but at 1080p it might not look as crisp?
I mean, I think it's just about how the game feels. If it feels smooth, I can play it, of course, but if Okay, there's one more point, that on LAN tournaments you don't have the same monitors, of course, or the same PCs every time, so also playing full HD is sometimes really risky, because when I'm playing at home with my 3090, I have like 1000 FPS, everything is running really smooth, then you go to a LAN environment and you have like the worst PCs ever sometimes, and I can't really play full HD at all. So I will probably just play like a medium resolution or like full HD, so I at least have the same kind of feeling.
Okay, yeah, and that was going to be my next question. What FPS range usually is the cutoff point of where you can't tell anymore?
I mean,
I can definitely see the difference between 60 and 120, but beyond that, you're a pro, you've got better eyes than I do. What's that kind of upper limit of performance that you don't see as much benefit going past that?
I'm not sure about the math, but I heard that when you play 240 Hertz, you have to have 480 FPS, so it feels really smooth and like on a consistent basis. And that's what I'm always trying to go for, that I have a good resolution, so I get always more than, like, let's say 500 FPS. And yeah, I play Counter-Strike, it's this old source engine. If you get above 1000 FPS, your game starts lagging and dropping and you can't really play at all.
Sure.
So yeah, I just try to go over 500, but not over.
So usually double your target frame rate is a good rule of thumb for competitive sports.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you very much. Good luck in your match tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hello, we're here at Dreamhack Day 2. We're here with G2 Esports from Berlin, right? Over in Germany? Yeah, that's crazy. And y'all just got finished with a round of CSGO, right?
Yeah.
Cool. How did the match go?
I mean, it was great.
It was great?
It was great.
Cool. So on my channel, we focus more on the science and technology of it, and you know, building PCs and all that stuff. And I always hear marketing teams saying, you know, you got to get the 3080, the 3090, Intel, all that stuff. What kind of PCs do y'all actually perform on when you're in competition? Are they? I know they're the same across the board, but do you know what types of processors or graphics cards you're playing on?
I mean, like the important thing in PC, I think it's CPU, like, because like with the CS:GO, it depends on your CPU what you have, and like which power CPU do you have, the more FPS you have in the game. So I use like Intel, the last 1200K.
Yeah.
It's the most like, powerful, and I mean GPU is not like important in the game for CS:GO, but like for other games, for example Fortnite, PUBG, it's important.
Sure. So on the machines you're playing at this weekend's events, are they using the Intel 12900s? Cool.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea of what GPU they're running? Sorry if this is drilling you on super technical stuff, but
How GPU?
what type of GPU? I know they're probably Nvidia, but is it like a 3080?
Oh yeah. I mean, for example, I use like at home 3080 Ti.
Yep.
It's the last one as well, like, but maybe in the future they will have like 4080 and I'll buy it Insta.
Yeah.
But like on this tournament we had 2080.
Okay.
And I mean, it doesn't matter honestly. Like if we would have like 1080, it's also good, you know, because CPU is powerful.
Cool.
Here we have 12100K.
Yep. Yeah, I was at the Creator Studio last night and I got to do a review of the 12900K. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So my next batch of questions is more of like the settings you like to run. So I talked with I think Big Esports yesterday, and they primarily play at 1080p. Is that the similar resolution you play at, or full HD?
Okay. I play not Full HD. I play 4:3. I don't know.
4K?
Yeah. No.
Oh, 4x3.
4:3. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you're old school on like a standard
Yeah.
TV setup.
I mean,
okay.
for like when you have 4:3, it's like models that are more slowly, you know. When you have 5:3, they're more speedy, you know.
Okay, that's really interesting because you see a lot of the industry pushing 1440p, 4K. If you were given the option to play at 4K, would you actually choose that option, or would you go back to your tried and true full HD 4:3 aspect ratios?
Yeah, I'll go back to 4:3 honestly.
Okay.
I don't like Full HD because like I'll get used to, you know.
Yeah.
I played like before that, back in the days, I played only 4:3 and 5:4.
Okay, very cool. And then as far as settings, everything you tack it down to low, or do you like to dial settings up so it looks a little better, so it's a little crisper lines?
I mean, I don't like to put everything high. I just have shadow quality on high and everything is low. Also, like the boost player contrast is disabled because I don't like. You know, like you have boost player contrast, and you see people on distance more, you know.
Yeah.
And I disable this thing. Yeah, everything is low.
Okay, that's very interesting. And
More
then,
for FPS, you know.
yeah. And then the shadows is important because you want to know like where they're
Yeah.
at and see if they're behind a corner.
When
Or
you stay
so.
above, you see maybe shadow down.
Yeah. And then when it comes to refresh rates, 120 hertz, 240 hertz, what's the limit that you usually get to a point where you can't really tell the difference?
I mean, like now 240 is more better for everyone. Like you cannot use 60 Hz in the game. I mean, you can, but it's
Yeah.
old school, you know.
Yep.
Maybe you don't have money to buy 240, but like 240 is good. I don't like 360 because I mean, on tournaments, organizers they don't use 360 Hz because people don't get used to play on it, and you don't have so much FPS to play on it.
Yep.
So like, yeah, we use 240.
So you usually think beyond 240 hertz, it actually hurts your performance because it just doesn't feel good.
Yeah, it doesn't feel good.
Okay, cool. So if you were to go between 120 hertz and 240 hertz, do you think you could tell the difference in how you perform? Of course. Cool. There was a Linus Tech Tips video where they got like Shroud and a couple of the Overwatch guys, and they said about beyond 144 they couldn't tell the difference. So
I guess it depends on the player and the game, maybe.
I think it depends on the player. Because, for example, me, I felt the difference between like 144 and 240. And also I felt the difference between 240 and 360. I tried 360 and I didn't like it. I tried, I didn't like it.
All right, cool. Well, thank you very much for the interview, and I wish you luck in the rest of your tournament. So here we are, we're on day 3 of Dreamhack Dallas. I'm with Team Furia, right?
Yeah.
And we're gonna be just talking about the different kinds of computers and monitors and graphics cards you guys use, because, you know, since you're a professional sports team, you know, you need the best performance, but I'm really curious what kind of settings and stuff you do to get there. So on the competition machines, do you have any idea what kind of graphics cards you typically use?
Yeah, we typically use the Nvidia graphics. I think it's like that since 2000, 2001, because I started playing CS 1.4, 1.5 at that time.
Yep, I played that.
And, and it was like Nvidia already, and they, when we talk about performance and quality, I don't know. I'm not a tech guy like that, but I know Nvidia is doing like a really good job.
Sure. So whenever you get into the game, into your settings, do you typically just drag everything down to low? I mentioned another team mentioned they like to keep shadows at high in order to get accurate placement. Are there any preferences you have in your settings, or do you just typically use whatever's default when you get on there?
Yeah, when we open the game, normally we change the settings, and you have like some players that like to put everything low, and some players that like to use the shader and high, because he knows like sometimes depends where you are in the map, you can have an advantage. So right now when we are playing a tournament like this, a tier 1 tournament, we know we have like really good settings, and we can like try to have a little bit more.
Do y'all sometimes have like map specific settings? You said sometimes it might help you.
No, I think you have sometimes that are more heavy, like ancient, that a lot of green and water and stuff like that. But normally they use the same settings for.
That makes it pretty straightforward across all the maps, and you don't have to. Oh, gotta go in.
Yeah.
Cool. So the next thing is, when it comes to resolution, do you typically game with full HD or 1080p, or do you use some other aspect ratio?
A good question, because players, the pro scene, they change a lot.
Yep, you know? I've heard one player says he likes 5:3 aspect ratio, another was full HD or 720p.
Yeah.
How about you? What do you like to game at when you're in competition?
When I'm the coach, but I'm not playing anymore. But when I used to play, I really like to use like a medium resolution, not full HD, like 4:3 aspect.
4:3 aspect ratio.
Yeah.
Okay.
And sometimes with black bars, because
depending on the monitors you're on.
I was like a 1.6 player, and we used a lot black bars. But right now, I think with the PCs we have, with the settings we have, we can use much more like full HD.
Cool. And then I think the last question is, obviously response times are critical. The faster the refresh rate, the better. At what point do you typically see less benefit of going higher in your refresh rate from like 120 to 240? What's usually the cutoff point for your players, and where they stop to see a difference when it comes to the refresh rate?
Yeah, I think I'm not like too into attack, but when I talk with them about this, they said to me that 240 is amazing compared to 120.
Okay.
But you need to have a really good PC, because you need to have more than 240 FPS to understand what is the performance of this monitor.
And it doesn't dip or you see anything.
Yeah, you need to have a really good PC. And right now we are in this kind of situation. We have always a really good PC, and we can like use 240, and it's really good. I know you have like some monitors that have more than 240, but right now I don't think that's you can like see the difference,
Okay, very cool. And then the last question, marketing teams are always trying to upsell us on the latest and greatest GPUs. and resolutions. Everyone loves 4K. If y'all were given 4K monitors in a competitive scene, would that be something that would actually benefit your teams in terms of visual clarity and being able to see things better, even if you can keep it at 120 or 240 hertz? Because CSGO is not a very heavy game.
Yeah. I don't know. I think the future, it's bright, the tech is evolving really fast as always, and I think, it could be the future, and 4K quality, it's amazing. And if
Or
they
whatever
can,
the 4:3 aspect ratio.
yeah,
of
if they
4K
can
is.
keep the response on time and have a better quality, I think it's really good.
All right, cool. Well, thank you very much for having us, and we'll be wrapping this up here in a second. Cool.
I really enjoyed talking to all of the different esports teams over at Dreamhack, and there's a few different takeaways I want to highlight with you guys to close out this video. Now, first and foremost is resolution. 1080p is just fine when it comes to competitive gaming. In fact, if you're wanting to get that old school Counter-Strike feeling like many of the pros do, going to smaller resolutions like 720p or different aspect ratios like 4:3, it's perfectly acceptable even from a competitive standpoint. Now, when it comes to 1440p and 4K, though I prefer the higher pixel densities and the finer detail, many of the pros don't see the competitive edge when it goes to the higher resolutions. So if you're on a budget and you're looking for a really good monitor, definitely emphasize on the higher refresh rates and lower response times instead of going to the next level of resolutions. Speaking of monitors, and that is frame rate targets. Many of the esports teams are shooting for a 240 hertz panel, and of course they recommend going up to about 480 FPS when it comes to the target frame rate in your game. Now with Counter-Strike, that's pretty easy to hit. I was able to hit right around 348 on average with my 1080p on just a 6600 XT. In fact, if we go with a faster processor like the 5800 X3D or any of the 12th gen parts, we'll probably get close to hitting that 400 FPS frame rate target. But if you're going to be going with a 120 hertz panel, man, you're only having to shoot for 240 FPS, which is a lot easier to maintain and hit, especially on older generations of hardware. And going back to resolutions for just a second, even if we are able to hit that 240 hertz on a 1440p monitor, that's a lot of graphic horsepower that you're going to need, and you're just not going to get that competitive edge. So going beyond 240 hertz to the 360 panels or even the new 500 hertz Asus panel, many of the pros don't really like the feel of 360 hertz at this moment. So I would definitely tap on the brakes from the marketing team's perspectives and stick to the tried and true 120 or 240 hertz panels. And lastly is quality settings. Now, I admit I love gaming at high quality settings because I'm PC master race, what I gotta say. But many of the pros definitely dial their things down to low and only emphasize a couple of different settings. So definitely check out some of the different specific forums or websites that recommend settings for you guys. That way you can get a more informed choice when it comes to your selections. But when it comes to benchmarking, that's where things get a little tricky, at least from my perspective, because many videos I like to go with the high detail settings or even going to ultra quality, and that's not really applicable when playing these types of games. So going forward, when I'm doing my benchmarking, I'm definitely going to be tailoring the quality settings to better match what is the more real world application for those games. So for Counter-Strike, we're going with everything low except for the shadow or shader quality, setting that to high. So Fortnite's definitely going to have some differences, as well as some of the other games. But that's all the pros had to say when it comes to talking about resolutions and frame rates for esports. So let me know down in the comments below if there's a team you'd like me to talk about, or if there's any types of games y'all want me to focus on and maybe do some specific benchmarking in order to give you guys optimized settings or optimized configs that y'all might want to buy going into 2022 and maybe into the future. So thank you guys for watching. Hope y'all have a great one. Turk Force, we'll catch you later.